I'm going to share my screen. But before we do that, Sam, would you mind? I'm not sure we have anybody who's going to be looking for interpretation, but let's go ahead and make sure.
Okay. Yes, and if someone does log in and we need interpretation, we can give the instructions again.
Great.
But I'll go ahead and start. Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Guzman with the CLC, and the organizers of this event have made a commitment to language justice. Now, what that means is we want to create a space where everyone can participate and engage in the language that they feel more comfortably. We will use a simultaneous interpretation feature in Zoom to create this space. When I finish this same statement in Spanish, we will turn on the interpretation and you will see a globe icon at the bottom of your screen that says interpretation. Everyone should go into that icon, click on it, and then select your preferred language. In this case, either English or Spanish. Please remember that if you are speaking, remember to talk at a measured pace because Spanish is 20% longer than English. So just keep that in mind, especially if you're reading something off a slide or something, people tend to go a little bit faster. But hola a todos. Well, at this point, I would say the same instructions in Spanish and ask everybody to go into interpretation and then select the preferred language. Also, when you do select your preferred language, make sure you click, or if you select Spanish, click on silence original audio so you don't hear the English and the Spanish versions at the same time. But other than that, we can turn on interpretation, or if we want to keep it deactivated and wait until somebody needs interpretation, and I can give those instructions again. It's up to you.
Let's go ahead and turn on interpretation so we have the benefit of your recording.
Oh, that's right. Exactly. So
Jody, could you take care of that?
Let's turn that on and everyone select their preferred language. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Great. Good evening, everybody. My name is Brian Copham. I am the manager for our loan program here at the CDA, and I'm also helping with the Resilient Food System Infrastructure Grant. And with me, I have my colleague and program coordinator, Jody Walder, who is also assisting with the RFSI and will assist us with this process as well. I'm going to share my screen and walk relatively quickly through a presentation that we have here that breaks down the basic nuts and bolts of this program. And then there will be plenty of time for Q&A afterwards. And this is being recorded, so you can always access the recording online on our website at ag.colorado.gov/RFSI, and you will find the recording posted there in a few days. There's also our original recording currently posted of the first webinar that we did, and we have some upcoming Q&A that is going to be posted. I'd like to start with an overview of what the purpose of this grant is. If I can control my screen, here we go. This is language from the USDA that has been broken down into more understandable components for some of us at least. This Resilient Food System Infrastructure Grant is designed to serve middle of the supply chain needs. And that largely translates to processing. We can think of middle of the supply chain as what happens after harvest and before retail. Retail is the end of the supply chain. So this is going to cover pieces like distribution, cold storage, dry storage, processing equipment like grinding or juicing or IQF are good examples of that kind of thing. There are a number of different processing components. Most all of them fit under this definition. The grant also says it is for locally and regionally produced food products, which we are going to define as grown in Colorado. So we're looking for projects that really benefit the producers who are growing in Colorado. This includes specialty crops, dairy, grains for human consumption, aquaculture, and other food products. What this means is not meat. The fastest way to get to what is an allowable product under this is to say it is non-meat processing. There's already been a number of programs put out there for meat, and the USDA really wanted to make sure that those products like grain and dairy, eggs, which are not directly meat, honey, fruit, vegetables, all of that, legumes, was also getting support for these middle of the supply chain needs and infrastructure. And then very importantly, it is meant for human consumption, which means it is not for projects that are, it's not for corn that's being used for ethanol, it's not for animal feed, it's not for industrial oils, and it's not for other industrial products that you might think like fibers and things like that to be spun into clothing. It's very important. This is a project for human consumption. Okay, the RFSI grant is from the USDA, and the amount that our state was awarded was determined by formula. Every state in the union received an award of some amount, and that award was determined by a formula of the agricultural outputs of each state. We were awarded $4.155 million to distribute under this program, as well as to pay for administration and some of our supply chain coordination activities. In order to receive this grant, we were required to submit a state plan to the USDA, the Agricultural Marketing Service, for their approval. We went back and forth a few times, and they did approve our plan in November. So now we are getting ready to bring it forth to the public. As a matter of the process of writing the state plan, we did do quite a bit of outreach via a third party. We had 33 responses to our survey, 12 individual interviews, 5 virtual focus groups with 57 people, and over 600 comments in total, helping us understand what would be most important for farmers and food processors in the state. As I mentioned, these are processing projects which really involve that piece after harvest and before retail. The product types, produce, grain, legumes, potatoes, dairy, eggs, honey, as long as it's for human consumption and it's non-meat. Some of you may be aware that about a year and a half ago, we awarded funds about $3.8 million to non-meat processing under our farm to market infrastructure program. And those awards were up to $150,000. They averaged right around $70,000. And there was initial indications that much of the need for kind of small equipment grants had already been met with that money. However, I'm going to say this twice. Here's the first time. We are soliciting additional input on whether we should be looking at smaller projects as well. So you will find a link to our survey just a little bit later in the presentation here. And please take the time to share that with your producer friends. Give us feedback on what you think is important. An important criteria is, particularly for the infrastructure grants, which are the larger projects, is that the projects have broad impact. That means that of the money to be awarded, it is going to be unlikely that we will be awarding a large project that just benefits, for instance, one operation, meaning one producer. This is really intended to strengthen the agricultural system, the non-meat agricultural system in Colorado, by making projects, building projects that have a lot of impact on different producers across the state or in a region. And then also another priority will be historically underserved and socially disadvantaged producers or businesses. Project examples, which for our Spanish-speaking listeners, I do not have translated on the slide, but we will provide translation in the audio. Examples include construction of a new facility, increasing cold storage, increasing packaging and label capabilities, modernizing equipment or facilities, purchase and installation of specialized equipment. Specialized equipment in this case could be juicer for fruit. It could be something as simple as a garlic, something that cleans garlic, raw garlic, and prepares it for use. It could be cleaning and grating legumes. It could be milling wheat. This also includes specialty vehicles. The grant will not cover general use vehicles or equipment. As an example, if somebody wants to buy a pickup under the grant in order to do deliveries, that is not considered a specialty vehicle, because that same vehicle can really be used for taking the kids to soccer, picking up supplies. There's many, many different uses. However, if it's a refrigerated truck for making deliveries, and potentially even a box truck, although that's right on the line, that could work. But hopefully you get the idea of what is intended with specialty equipment really having a use that is somewhat limited to the project itself. Climate smart equipment, installing that, so that would be equipment that saves water, has less energy usage. If you think of the scope of what we're considering as climate smart, there are a number of possibilities there. Soil health doesn't really fit because that's on the production side. That's pre-harvest. And so again, this is really middle of the supply chain. Here they talk about improving air quality, for instance. So it could be a scrubber on your outtake or your exhaust. Modernizing equipment or facilities to ensure food safety, and then training on the use of all equipment that was purchased under the grant or associated with new processes. So you can include, as an example, training your staff how to use equipment. Right now, potential awards are set between $200,000 and $3 million. We have, after other costs are considered, approximately $3 million to distribute via subgrants. And so it's unlikely we're going to make a $3 million grant, although if there is an amazing project that pops up that has statewide impact and clearly has a lot of support, it is possible. It is not likely. This is the second time I'm going to mention it, looking for that feedback on should we go back to, say, 100,000 to 3 million, and is there still a demand for equipment only grants that are less than 100,000? So these would be smaller grants that, say, for buying cold storage for an existing facility, or a specialized piece of equipment that costs 50,000 but doesn't involve an entire build. The way that this is going to work logistically is you as an applicant will submit an application to us. The applications happen in 2 tiers. In tier 1, we will be looking for a general description of your project with some general parameters of cost and what will be involved. After the listening sessions we did before submitting our state plan, one of the things we learned was that people were really kind of frustrated with having to go through a very long and in-depth application process only to find out that they didn't qualify in the first place. So the Tier 1 application process is designed to really get at those key questions of, does your project meet the minimum requirements to be considered for this grant? And if so, then applicants will be invited to fill out a grant at the second stage, the Tier 2 grants. That is a USDA format grant. It's in PDF. You have to have Adobe Acrobat Reader in order to fill it out. Although if you don't have it, that's okay. We'll work with you by essentially giving you a Word version, and then we will put it into an Adobe Acrobat format for you. Once we have received applications and have the review team go through them, rank them, and we've made our choices of what we think, or rather the review team thinks, are projects that best meet the criteria for this grant, then those go as recommendations to the USDA. And the Agricultural Marketing Service itself will be reviewing your application and making determinations, final determinations on who receives an award. There's an important point. Awards for underserved, historically disadvantaged businesses that qualify under those definitions, and that is, what's the term I'm using for self-certifying. They have a 25% match, or you have a 25% match that's required if you meet that definition, which means if you have a $400,000 project and you receive 300,000, you only have to match 100,000. For any applicant who does not qualify under that definition, the match is 50%. So if it's a $400,000 project, the applicant has to match $200,000 in goods and services, and the award would subsequently be $200,000. In the grant process timeline, we have already started collecting additional feedback. This is where we would love you to fill out the survey that is indicated at the end of this presentation. We will open Tier 1 applications on February 7th. If you go to our website at ag.colorado.gov/RFSI, you will find the application under there, as well as general information on the grant, its purposes, and what will be involved in applying for it. We will take about a month to review those applications, and then shortly after we collect them, so we'll collect them on 3/7. March 7th will be the deadline to submit them, and then about 3 weeks later, we will have invitations to producers and processors to submit Tier 2 applications. And once those are in, we will have our final recommendations to the USDA to 7th is our current target for that. And I see we have a question from Plant Industry. Aldo.
Hi, Brian. I'm sorry. Can you go back to that last slide?
You bet.
Thank you. That was the only question.
That's an easy one. Anytime I'll do that, Aldo.
Thanks, Brian.
You bet.
I'm sorry. Can you go back one more time? Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, take your time on this. What's good to know is that all applications or recommendations are due to the USDA by May 24th, no later than May 24th. And it is as yet unknown how long it is going to take them to review the applications, remembering they do have 50 states to do this with, and there will be potentially dozens of applications from each state.
Thank you,
Aldo,
Brian.
are you good on this?
I am good. Thank you, sir.
Okay, you bet. This is the slide that tells you where to find the survey. Whoops, dang, there it is. This is a slide that tells you where to find the survey, and I'm wondering, Jody, could you pop it in the chat? I just tried copying it, but we did a little wonky thing here. That's the wonky thing. Let me see if I can copy link address. Okay, maybe I'm good. Let me try dropping it here in the chat.
Yep.
Okay, there we go. There is the survey. So please distribute the link, have your processing and producer friends fill it out, and tell us what we should be focusing on if we're not already focused on it. Those are the nuts and bolts of the presentation. I will say that there are a number of things that are going to be required in the final application that I think will be good to know. And I am going to see if I can simply sneak that document here, which is not on the presentation, but if I can't sneak that document in, so to give you an idea of what that really looks like. That is not the document. Yeah, I apologize. I'm just looking here at the bottom. Well, it appears I no longer have that document available. Let me, oh, here it is. Okay. I'm going to expand this and see if I can share this. Jody, do you see the presentation or something else on the screen?
Oh, it's just a document that you just pulled up.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger and walk through it. Okay.
Looks good.
This is an outline of the full application from the USDA. And you'll see in the beginning that the information is relatively straightforward: name, entity type, meaning nonprofit, LLC, that type of thing, sole proprietorship, a unique identifier that you can apply for, contact information, etc. There is also a distressed community score, meaning if you live in an area that is considered a distressed community, that will aid in the priority of your application. Applicant type, farmer, processor, nonprofit. Project title, pretty straightforward. Project start date and end date. When do you anticipate the project starting and ending? And on that point, the grant ends on May 24th, 2027. Anything not submitted for reimbursement by April 24th, 2027 will not be reimbursable because there's reporting that has to be done. So there is a firm deadline of about 3 years on this grant. There is a 250-word executive summary that is involved in the application. Project purpose is a multiple choice of 11 choices. Narratives on the specific issue, problem, or need that your project will address. A list of objectives that this project will achieve. Number and type of project beneficiaries. As an example, your project may be for grain milling and you've got 10 growers that are part of it, and it is very much a collective project, and so you would put 10 down for that and who they are. Whether there is other federal or state funds that have been applied for the project. It's not a disqualifying question. It's just something they're looking to collect information on. A description of stakeholders who support this project and why. This again speaks to the broad impact. If you have a number of members in your community who support it, they say, absolutely, we need this, then they will be listed and a explanation of why they support it. And you will also be wanting to get letters of support from those individuals. There are a number of outcome measures that will be looked at. For example, number of new facilities constructed, number of processing equipment units purchased and installed, number of employees trained, number of jobs created, number of new value-added products developed. That's just a small sampling of the list the USDA has set forth. They are really looking to understand whether this money is making an impact in the community. And then we get into the budget narrative. If you have matching funds, well, you're required to have matching funds. So the question is, are those real? So there are letters of verification that will be needed. For instance, if you have an attorney who is helping with the permitting process and has said they will donate some of their time, there needs to be a letter from that individual. If you have critical infrastructure that is needed in order to complete the project, let's say your project depends on the fact that you have an existing building, you will have to provide a letter saying all of that critical infrastructure is already in place at the time of application. That means that an applicant cannot say, we're ready to do this and we're going to raise money to build the building while we're doing this other thing. The critical infrastructure, including funds, have to be available at the time of application. There is a self-certification for the graduated match that is for the historically underserved and socially disadvantaged. And then a budget summary that includes, it's a summary of the items I'm about to run through. Personnel budget and justification, fringe benefits budget, that's for personnel, travel budget and justification, equipment budget and justification, supplies budget and justification, construction budget and justification, contractual consultant budget / consultant and justification, other budget and justification. The AMS is really looking for an understanding of what is being purchased and why is it needed. That's in order to make sure that this money is being most efficiently distributed. And then there is an allowance for indirect costs for your administrative burden in receiving the money, managing it, doing the reporting. The standard, I think the de minimis rate is 10%, unless you have a negotiated rate with the federal government and NICRA. Otherwise, it will be up to and no more than 10%. There is a fair amount involved in filling out an application like this. We are well aware. So we are coordinating with the Regional Food Business Center, which is also a new project put forth by the USDA. Colorado is one of 6 states in the Northwest and Rocky Mountain Regional Food Business Center. The other states are Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. The purpose of the Regional Food Business Centers is to provide technical assistance to farmers, food entrepreneurs, ranchers, processors, and one of the benefits that they will contribute to this particular grant is providing awards, call them scholarships, up to $2,000 to hire a grant writer to help with these second-tier applications if you are interested in doing that and qualifying. So there is some support for this despite the significant amount of work that is going into it on your side. And I will pop back to, if I can figure out how, there we go. I will pop back to our presentation and then open this for questions. Well, why don't I just stop sharing? There we go. Okay. Can I answer questions for anybody?
There's nothing in the chat.
Okay.
Is this the first year of this project, Brian?
It is. This is a new grant. It officially launched on May of 2023, but like Colorado, most states did not get their state plans approved until late in 2023. So the 4-year grant turned into kind of like a 3-year grant and change, but this is the first time it's been offered.
And if awarded, is this a one-time award?
It is a one-time award, and it is also on a reimbursement basis, which can be challenging, particularly with larger awards, because the grantee needs to be able to come up with funds to purchase equipment or pay for construction, whatever it is, until and then they will submit the receipts or invoices for those expenses and be reimbursed. So there is some burden on an applicant's cash flow.
And on the timeline, so you said they apply to CDA. CDA makes the recommendations to USDA. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then the timeline for USDA to make like a final approval of who gets awarded. Did I miss that?
Not exactly. The earlier response to that was we don't quite know yet, but I would expect about an 8-week turnaround.
And no expenditures can be made until they're awarded by the USDA, correct?
That's correct. Thank you. I believe that is correct. There's something that I'm wondering if maybe there is some allowance. Now, typically that would be exactly right, but although we will look into that a little bit further and put that up on the FAQ.
And you mentioned in the second tier where it goes to the USDA, there is an allowance to pay for a grant writer.
There is not so much an allowance. An applicant can apply for a scholarship or grant from the Regional Food Business Center for up to $2,000 for grant writing.
For grant writing, okay.
There are not RFSI funds available, however, for grant writing.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
Happy? Oh, sorry, Aldo, did you have something else?
No, that was it.
Yeah, so is there anybody, as we're drafting the tier 1 pre-application process, is there anybody who would be able to support us if we had put things together, an idea just to make sure that it fits into the requirements of the grant?
Yeah, you could reach out to Jody or myself and we'd be happy to confer with you on that. And excuse me, Jody, would you mind popping our emails into the chat?
Yep, I will.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Kathy, do you have an idea of what you're looking at?
Yeah, we are FarmShare is a technology company, and we help to get farmers' goods to market through distribution, and part of the middle of the supply chain would be more of the packaging and trying to get it into the hands of the end users. So we do have some use cases, and I think we'd have to build our maybe one of our businesses around it. So we have like 4 different products, but it sounds like something we could do, but I would make sure that if we thread the needle that we're meeting the requirements of the grant itself and not just wasting our time. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah, please reach out with that. And probably earlier is better, just because I'm thinking it'll be a benefit to talk with the AMS on that kind of scenario to make sure we have it right.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
You bet. If there are no further questions, our emails are in the chat, and then the link to the survey is in the chat. If I haven't mentioned it already, we'd love for you to open that survey and give your feedback on what you think the funds would best be used for and whether awards less than $200,000 would be beneficial. And I failed to mention that in the equipment only grants that may be allowed by the AMS for our program, those do not require a match. So if somebody's looking for a $25,000 piece of equipment that clearly is a benefit, and of course, the broader the impact, the better, that is a $25,000 award with no match required as an equipment only grant. Yes, Aldo.
My internet was unstable like the first 15-20 minutes of the presentation. I was going in and out and kind of not getting the whole presentation. Is there a place where I could go and go back and listen to this recording?
Yeah, absolutely. We will post the recording on the website at ag.colorado.gov/RFSI for Resilient Food System Infrastructure. And there is currently a recording of our first webinar up there that will eventually be replaced by this one. So just look for it there, and we will have it in both English and Spanish.
Awesome. Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you, Aldo.
Have a good night, guys.
Thanks, you
Thanks,
too.
Alden.
Hollis, any questions from you?
I am okay. Thank you, Brian. I really appreciate the information.
You bet. Thanks for joining.
Yep.
Okay. Jody, I think we can turn off the recording.
Sounds good.